26 years, I made every payroll. And like I said, the week before payroll, I knew either I have it or it's in there and the rest of it will come in, except for one time. And I had done everything I knew to do. I did not have the money to pay my employees. And I looked to see what was coming in, and there was not enough coming in the next week that I knew that we can make payroll. I'd already taken myself out of the equation, but that wasn't enough. I had managed the money as tightly as I could, but that was not enough. And so I just simply got down and prayed.
Hey, Phillip,
Hey, Kent.
we're back. I want to ask you a question about constant challenges. Part of being an entrepreneur, I'm sure you had situations where you were challenged by the same thing. Was there anything that comes to mind when I bring that up?
Yeah, there were many stressors, of course, being an entrepreneur and
Of
building a
course.
business. But when you said that constantly come up, it triggered something in my head because there was one worry, I guess I could call it, fear. It was a fear that I dealt with, particularly after I hired employees and I payroll every other Friday. So my greatest fear as an entrepreneur and something I dealt with constantly and regularly was worrying about making payroll. I absolutely knew that I could not miss a payroll. Now, I will tell you, after 26 years, I never missed a payroll. Never.
That's fabulous.
And I'm very proud of that. But it didn't happen magically. There was a lot of sacrifice involved. There was a lot of strategy involved, a lot of money management. And I learned to manage money very tightly and very closely. And I was about making sure that every other Friday, I had it marked on my calendar. Every other Friday, I had to have so much. I knew what I had to have to make payroll. So, were there times that I could make payroll for everybody except for me? Oh,
Okay.
yes. There were times, multiple times. Everybody got a paycheck. I did not get a paycheck. That
Okay.
happened.
But I mean, I've heard stories like this where you realized I can make payroll as long as I don't pay myself. Was that once a month, once every few months? I guess different times there was different challenges. How did that work as far as when you're like, oh wow, we're in a bad state and I'm not getting paid again?
I wouldn't say it happened like monthly, but there were
Right.
there were times, just the ebb and flow of business, particularly summer. Summer was
Oh,
a lean time for us because people weren't in the office. I'm talking our clients weren't in the office. And so if they were not using our service, then we couldn't bill as much or there weren't any projects going summer.
sure.
So I just knew summer was going to be a challenge.
Got it.
And compound that with you have employees taking vacation time. So they're not, the nature of my business was that employees would turn in timesheets, and that's how we made money, is they would bill their time. So you compound the slow time of summer with employees taking time off and getting paid for not being there. It made it challenging. So I would say it happened more than once. It wasn't something that happened monthly, but it was
Right.
something I worried about every week. There's no doubt about it. And I knew, to this day, I know exactly how much is in my personal bank account. I always knew to a penny how much was in my business account. I had to know that. Maybe that's
Okay.
just who I am that
Right.
way. So I knew how much was in there. I knew how much we had billed, and I
Mm.
knew when typically those checks would come in. So, law firm A, they usually paid within 2 weeks. Law firm C, they paid maybe at the end of the month. So I knew what the rhythm was. So I had it mapped out. Okay, this Friday, either we've got the money in the bank or we will have it by Wednesday.
Okay.
So I would say for any entrepreneur, and I guess it was easy for me because I like managing money. I actually
Okay.
enjoy that. But for someone that does not watch their cash management very closely, that can be a big gotcha. Just the timing of when money comes in and when money goes out. And if you're not good at that, you need to have somebody that is really good at that. And if you can wait on paying a bill until the end of the month or until after payroll, then that's probably the thing to do. And so
Right.
I managed that very closely. But like I said, there were times I was fine with it. It hurt, but there were times I did not pay myself until the next week, or maybe I skipped a payroll for me because what I did, um, I guess people think entrepreneurs just have all the money comes to them
Yeah.
and they dole out a
You
little bit to I put myself on a salary just like everybody else.
okay?
And I said, this year for running this business, I'm going to make X. And sometimes I made that and there was some left over. Sometimes I made that and there was none left over. And then there were sometimes I didn't make X because we didn't make
Of
that
course.
much. So
Of
the
course.
entrepreneur takes the risk. And
Right.
I guess that's one misconception that people that work for a small company and they think the owner is rolling in the dough, not
Right.
realizing that, yeah, last year was a really good year. And so they got a big bonus because they risked their capital to fund this business. But this year, there's a downturn. And you know what? They're not even going to make their stated salary. Everybody else will, but the entrepreneur is not. And that happened. That absolutely happened.
So you're not at the latest of a long line of millionaires
Oh,
who
no.
had a big cash pocket there are filed that you could always rely on.
Kent, when I started the business, I had less than 1 week's worth of cash to live off of. That's what I started the business on.
Okay.
That
All
is
right.
laughable. Now, I know my business is sort of a unicorn in that I didn't get a SBA loan. I didn't get a line of credit. I'm not sure I could have qualified back in those days for a line of credit.
Sure.
And so I ran my business strictly on a cash basis. And the nature of my business, I could do that because I didn't have to invest in a lot of inventory. But I ran very lean, and what we brought in, that's what I made. And we didn't bring it in, then I suffered the consequences of that. But I wanted to make sure that my employees got paid.
Right.
So
So who do you talk to then, Philip? When worker A, worker B goes home, or they all talk together, about how tight things are. You're the entrepreneur, the founder, the leader, and so it's like, huzzah, we're gonna make it, guys, even as you haven't been paid for two consecutive pay periods or thereabouts. Who did you turn to? Who did you discuss things with, even if it was just to get it off your chest, off your heart, as it were?
yeah, I kept a lot of that close to the vest, and it probably was not
Of course.
healthy emotionally for me, but I did keep a lot of negative things inside because I didn't want to portray in the office. I never
Of
wanted to,
course.
regardless of what things look like, I never wanted to portray to the employees that things were tough
Of course
because
not.
that had happened to me at a previous employment and it impacted my productivity and it impacted
Y-
my desire to work there. And so I absolutely never wanted to let that out in the office. I did have some close friends and family members that from time to time we confide in and say, hey, it's kind of tough. But I didn't do a whole lot of that because I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. I didn't want people to offer me money. It's just who I am. But I think having an outlet is important. Someone that you can confide in and they're not going to point fingers,
Right.
you're doing it all wrong or whatever. But they can be a source of encouragement. Absolutely.
Right.
But I will tell you, there was, like I said, 26 years, I made every payroll. And like I said, the week before payroll, I knew either I have it or it's in there and the rest of it will come in, except for one time.
Oh, tell
One
me about it.
time, and I had done everything I knew to do. I knew we were a week out from payroll, so it was a week, non-payroll week. I knew the next Friday. We did not have the money. Forget about me. I'd already taken myself out of the equation. I did not have the money to pay my employees. And I looked to see what was coming in, and there was not enough coming in the next week that I knew
Sure.
that we can make payroll. And so I was fit to be tied. I knew it. I knew the Friday before the Friday payroll. And this is where my faith comes in, because the sacrifice, I had already sacrificed. I'd already taken myself out of the equation, but that wasn't enough. I had managed the money as tightly as I could, but that was not enough. And so I just simply got down and prayed. I mean, that's all I know to do.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And I said, just very simply, like, God, I've done everything I know to do. I'm not taking a check, but it is important for me to be able to pay these employees. I'm asking you, help me to meet payroll next week. So I prayed that prayer on, probably, I think on Friday before I left the office, and racking my brain. Is there something I can
Of
do?
course.
Is there some lever I can push? Monday, I'm sitting in my office and I get a call from a lawyer that I do not know, never heard of him, never heard of his firm. It's a small boutique firm in Nashville, never heard of him. And at that time, there were some litigation specific software applications that we trained law firms to use. And consequently, we also would sell them that software to use in their litigation cases. We were a
Okay.
reseller. And so when we would
Mhm.
sell it, they would pay us, and then we get a wholesale rate on that, and we'd pay the software manufacturer. And so this lawyer on that Monday, after I prayed that prayer, called me and said, I'm so and so, and I understand that you are a reseller for this software. And you can only buy this software through a reseller. You couldn't go to Staples or anywhere else and get it. He goes, we have need of several licenses of this software for a big project that we're undergoing. Would we be able to buy that from you? I go, sure, absolutely. And I'm thinking, we're going to go through a purchase order thing. It's going to be a long drawn out thing. He goes, can you send me a quote? Sure, I can do that. So send him the quote and didn't think any more about it. The next day, this gentleman, this lawyer that I'd never heard of, walks in my door and hands me a check. When can we get the software?
Oh, wow.
The check, I kid you not, was just about the exact amount I needed to finish up making payroll.
Wow.
Those were the moments. There were many moments when I'm screaming and knocking on heaven's door, where is God? But then there were moments where, like, I know where God is. He is sitting right here beside me. I mean, those are the moments that kept me going.
Of
And there were
course.
multiple moments like that. But it didn't happen until I got to the end of what I did everything I could do. I was very good at managing money, and I had done everything, even to the point of me not getting a paycheck. And
Right.
when I came to the end of everything I could do, God made up the rest. No doubt about it.
Wow. I know where God is. It's right here.
He was
That's
right there helping me make payroll. No doubt.
wow.
After that, there were other lean times, but I never came close to not making payroll after that time. I was like, it just kind of gave me a confidence boost.
Of
Of course.
course.
And that's why I'm doing this podcast, Kent, is because the whole thing of building the business, it was getting new clients, it's building an infrastructure, it was all of that. It was the mechanics of building a business. But time and again, I would hit these moments that, like, God is in this. And being raised in a Christian home, and my parents are very involved in various ministries of the church, like, I separated ministry in the church house from what I do every day. And what I learned is that what I'm doing is what God called me to do. And he's enabling me to do this. That's how I knew there was a calling on my life. And this wasn't the only thing. It's like I was called to build a business. And
Right.
that's what I was
It's a
doing.
ministry. It's your
Absolutely.
calling. It's just as much as the traditional things we call ministries.
Absolutely.
That's an amazing testimony
So that
of God's
story,
grace.
sacrifice and scarcity, when you get to the end of that, and there's going to be that, but look to God to make up what you can't do.
Right.
He comes through. Maybe in ways sometimes we don't expect it, but he does come through.
That's a great story. But I have to ask one other thing about your Christian walk and your calling here. You said you were very good at keeping track of the money, keeping track of how the cash flow and so on. At what point are you in control? And what point are you giving that to God? If Philip, and I don't mean this in a personal way, if Philip or a business owner it got it down to a penny, are you trusting God at all, or are you taking it on your own? How did you find that balance, or how did you know I'm giving it to him, I'm being a good steward?
I think that's the key, what you said at the end, being a good steward, because you can say, oh, just not keep up with the money, Lord. God's not going to keep your books for you. Okay.
Right.
You have to do that, or you have to have somebody in your organization to do that. But what I felt like my responsibility, among other responsibilities in business, but my main responsibility is being a steward of what came in. And that meant I was making the decisions. I was the one carrying the one and so on. And we're going to pay this one, or we're going to do this here. We're going to purchase this. We're going to invest in this. And this is where I think I had talked about it on a previous episode, where sometimes there's not a manual that tells you how to do this. There's not a book how to manage your cash flow in the first 5 years of your business, not that I know of. But when you prayerfully go about this business of being an entrepreneur, in the sense that I feel like this is what God wants me to do, and you pray, God, give me wisdom, then use what God puts in your head. And I'm not
Okay.
saying it's like there weren't miracles like I just talked about every week. That No, there were times I was sweating over it, but God gave me the ability to do that. And I felt like there was some God inspired intuition many times
Okay.
that allowed me to make decisions, strategic decisions that turned out good. Now, I made some decisions that didn't turn out good. I'm not saying everything just turns out rosy, 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 but what I am saying is that when you prayerfully consider what you're doing in building the business, I believe that God in the long haul guides your paths. In fact, there's a verse, in all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your paths. I've got that on a little plaque that I keep in my room. In all your ways acknowledge him. Doesn't say he's going to tell you how to do everything, but he will direct your path. And I found that to be true over and over again, even when sometimes it meant I had to retract some steps I'd taken down a path and go down a different path. He was directing that as well, because I was learning lessons in the process.
That's great. That's always the challenge, right? Who's in charge, God or me?
Yeah.
When you're paying attention to every penny or every line or whatever the situation, so it's like giving it to him while being a good steward, while taking care of business or the calling that he's given you.
Yeah. I almost always I took ownership. I felt the pressure.
Of
And
course.
in that one situation, I had no more moves. I had no more moves on the chessboard. And that's when I said, God, either you
Yeah.
come through or I'm going to miss payroll for the first time.
Right.
He came through.
That's fabulous. Do you remember the first person you told about that afterwards, after you did a little shout and
I,
scream and
I think
thanking God?
I think I was teaching a Sunday school class at the time,
Okay.
related it to my
Share it
Sunday
there.
school class. Absolutely.
How could you not?
Yeah.
How could you
No,
not?
that's one of the memorable things. And there
Oh,
were
yeah.
many. There were many. I mean, I could literally I could do a podcast today on all the little things, some big, some small, but they were all big to me. Ways that God, I've heard there's a friend of mine that refers to these as God nods, like when God just
Oh,
kind of like, hey. Attaboy. You're doing all right. I got you.
Mm,
Those God
I
nods.
love that.
And
I
I'm
love
very,
that.
very thankful for that. So when you come to those times of scarcity and sacrifice in your business, don't think you're doing something wrong or I'm on the wrong path. Look at it as an opportunity for God to be your partner, to bring you through that. He will not let you down. I promise.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that today. That's a lot to think through and apply to our lives. Thank you so much.
See you next time, Kent.
You bet.